All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
My excitement is unabated, everyone. I know the world is a tough place, getting tougher. It was too easy for the Mad King just to swing into Washington and build an arch and, put his face everywhere, maybe get some coinage out there, sign some currency. That was too easy. Too easy to kind of ride the uptick in the economy because Biden's economy was coming out of COVID. Excuse me. And too easy to sort of ride that out, too easy to kind of let the world and the existing alliances settle. I mean, certainly there's a fragility to everything going on in Ukraine as Donald Trump took office. But instead of letting things sit, it was tariffs. It was jump on our allies. It was talk about annexing Canada, Mexico, jumping on Venezuela, a quick run by the Caribbean, take out some narco-terrorists or fishermen, who knows which, release some videos of stuff blowing up, and in a way sort of reassert the power that is America. All of this while jumping on Bitcoin and crypto and all the ways in which he's enriched himself and his family. And now it would appear he has created a situation from which it may be very difficult to extricate ourselves. Extricate is a ding word.
Speaking of
Kim
crypto,
is here. Yeah.
Hi.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah. What's that?
I
Kim?
heard, speaking of crypto, I heard that the toll that Iran wants to collect from ships passing through the Hormuz Strait, they want it in crypto.
That's right. They want it in crypto, and it's not just crypto. It is the undercutting of the petrodollar, the U.S. dollar. This is a hugely beneficial deal that was made decades ago, that all this oil is traded in dollars. It's what supports our economy in many ways. It supports our currency, most certainly. It also allows us to run up big debt. Dollars have a value, right? Because they are the currency to buy energy. But in addition to the crypto that they are demanding, the IRGC, they run now the Strait of Hormuz. Thank you very much, Donald Trump, for starting this whole thing, and Israel. They will take the Chinese yuan, which is very much what China wants them to do.
What?
Now, there's been a recoiling generally from getting into that with the yuan. They've always, the Chinese, wanted to get the yuan into the business of being a currency for energy trading. But one of the reasons that there's been a recoiling from it is because China's economy is very heavily managed, heavily influenced, understates it. You might want to say it is almost curated by the government, such that the true value of the yuan is manipulated, might be the very best word. The feeling about the U.S. economy, and this is one of the things that Donald Trump, and one of the things about the U.S. that has stood the test of time, the thing about the U.S. is there isn't a currency manipulation in any sort of traditional way in which it would undermine the economy. We're viewed as something of a free market. We're viewed as a stable government here. And so as a result, the currency here has value. They've been talking about trying to replace the petrodollar for a long time. When I say they, I mean even the Europeans. And now the Europeans are, that's on 10. They've cranked that up. I've talked to you before about how they're now no longer going to honor Visa and MasterCard in Europe. They're going to set up their own banking system there. So these American companies that have really thrived with worldwide access They're not going to thrive anymore. In a minute, I'll tell you about the oil companies, because the oil companies, how do you think they feel about the Strait of Hormuz right now? This president who was all about, hey, I'm going to take care of you guys. Don't worry. Give me $1 billion and you can do whatever you want. Drill, baby, drill. Well, it's not all drill, baby, drill. It's not all dropping bombs and drill, baby, drill. And honestly, that is the Donald Trump outlook. It's very basic. As I told you, these guys are all boom and no strategy.
I have a question
they
for
show
you.
Donald Trump. Sorry to interrupt, Kim. Just one second. I was just going to say they show Donald Trump these videos of stuff blowing up, and he thinks he's winning the war. I mean, literally, he may think he's winning. The article I was reading the other day was kind of a drill down on Susie Wiles and the fact that she, as the gatekeeper to the president, very close to him, an effective manager of the White House, and really, I mean, quite skilled. She was concerned that he was not getting real information about the war, that he legitimately may be thinking that America's doing better than it is. So this is all in this world of Trump, a shallow world, a guy who knows very little, but wants to flex the muscle that he perceives America as having. So much of that muscle is built up through soft power, as you know. The great credit to the U.S. is that you could have this powerful military and that your soft power did the talking for you. And that's not to say that America hasn't provided all these arms and there isn't this robust arms trade that goes to, every place from the Middle East to Ukraine. But what I'm suggesting is that these kinds of wars that are launched on a whim, without a goal, without a strategy, it's just, I've got ships and missiles, and you know what? Let's get it on, mother effers. That's really where we are. That wasn't America. And so the NATO alliance, which has protected Europe and protected the expansionist designs of Russia, it has really held and has been, I think, a shining light of diplomacy and of the kind of agreement that has led to a cloak of protection across the EU and across the world. I think all of that is in play now, and not in a good way. But anyway, we'll get to all of this. Again, Trump could have just done nothing and worried about putting his face on currency and building arches and, demolishing the East Wing and building some huge ballroom, which is actually just the top part of a massive bunker. It's madness. It really is madness. So, as I was saying, Kim is here and Albert is here too.
Albert, thank you.
I also wanted to mention that Tom Hartman is here today. Yeah. Tom Hartman will join in a bit. Tom Hartman and I, we really go up against each other actually in real time. So we did the conversation yesterday after the show, and we get into a lot of really good stuff. And at one point, I asked Tom a question, and he goes, wow. And then he answers the question. But that's the... It was a really, I have mad love for Tom Hartman. So for me, it was really, it's always a thrill when he comes through. And David Katz, I have mad love for him. Don't make me compare and don't make me choose. David Katz is the former federal prosecutor. And as Pam Bondi got the Evite from Congress to testify, and I guess she has responded no.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah, she is not about it. She does not want to go up to Capitol Hill.
The Dow has shattered 50,000.
She's going to need a new burn book if she goes up there. Maybe that's what she's working on.
She says, I'm not the AG anymore, and as such, I don't owe anything to you people. I'm not coming.
Wow.
Good day, sir.
Yeah. Maybe. I guess she's rough, man.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
Yes. Anyway, we'll talk to David Katz about that. Before I get into, I've got cuts from Todd Blanche, speaking of the Justice Department, but I've got cuts from Caroline Leavitt talking about the situation now. Also, what we've been talking about for days now finally has made, in a big way, the mainstream media. When I say days, I mean just this week we've been talking about and giving you examples of the way the MAGA coalition has uncoalitioned itself and how there is sort of a breakup of MAGA, and even the right is starting to break up. So even if you're not diehard MAGA, but you consider yourself on the right politically, there are serious questions, and this war may be pulverizing all of that. I'll have more on that, and I'll have some stuff from Fox and Friends and sort of losing MAGA and the right as we continue. Before I get any farther down, I wanted to thank everybody for
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank everybody for sending me an email. Those of you who are deep staters and are members at the deep state level, if you're on Patreon or PayPal, if you're contributing monthly at a deep stater level, you will get this link next week. We're working it all out, so be a little patient with us, but hopefully this will really be, we're trying to be fair to everybody who supports us, and this will be a way to at least have you sit in on our pre-show, and you might get a kick out of that. We actually have several plans along these lines. Also, I think deep staters get free access to the meetups. So next meetup, nice. I think that's the way it works. The other thing I wanted to mention, but I asked for folks who were deep staters to send me their email addresses so that they would be able to get the link, and I got a bunch of them. So again, if you haven't done that, please do. It's the markthompsonshow@gmail.com. Albert, is there anything we need to know about Mark's Madness? I thought you did very well with it. Kamish, you were hailed as a hero. You really did somehow pull it together with a turbo version of Mark's Madness that brought us 2 winners, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, Linda and Joel, congratulations again for winning Mark's Madness. Yeah. I did review the other brackets. Mark and Kim, a little further down here. Kim went 3 and 4 in the brackets.
I had Saudi Arabia pays cash to go all the way, and it lost like first thing out of the chute.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Yeah, these are the sound drops we put up against each other. This is our version of March Madness. We call it Mark's Madness if you're just joining us. So that was one of the drops. Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Yeah, and it lost. Yeah, it lost right away to another Trump drop, I think. But,
yeah, and Mark, you're here in 33, so not the best tournament showing.
Yeah,
but we'll get him next year. We'll figure it out and get him next year.
Top 10, you had it looks like Laura, Champagne Wishes, Allison, Bob. Look at Albert, went 17 and 1. The commish represented. What was the one you missed, Albert?
I think one of the Trump drops I had incorrect. There was one Trump bracket.
Yeah. For those just who didn't follow it closely, the Trump drop that really crushed was
the Mark Thompson Show.
What was the one? It was the one. I feel like the ass wasn't the ass.
They are kissing
Trump,
my ass.
Yeah, that was the one.
I think I had the other. There's nothing in our history or something like that.
But the one that won was Ridiculous, right?
Ridiculous did win. Bondi Ridiculous.
This is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
At least she won something on the way out,
Yeah,
give her a little something for a prize for the way out the door.
It was a final between Kissing My Ass and Ridiculous. Yeah.
Did I beat Mark, Albert?
No.
Or did Mark beat me?
I mean, there was 2 winners. It was Joel and Linda, but yes,
I mean, just
you
in
did have
the
a better
scheme of
showing.
things,
Kim had a better showing than I did.
I blame you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Really? Wow. I said
acetaminophen.
I thought acetaminophen was going to go all the way.
But
And that's what I got wrong. I got nothing in our history to move on, and
Oh yeah, nothing in our history. That's one you just kind of personally like. I kind of noticed.
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, congratulations to the winners, and I hope you'll wait. The UPS truck should be by.
You get nothing.
Exactly. You'll, but you have our ongoing respect and love, and that matters. That's what Albert told me. It matters. So it was a good rigged contest, like the 2024 election. Very well said. All right, let's get this thing going.
Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Well, it's a mess. I don't need to tell you that it's a mess. There's no way to spin this, although the White House is spinning it. And in reality, you have a ceasefire agreement that didn't even last a day from the looks of it. I'm fascinated by the way in which this White House is somehow taking a troubling pause in hostilities. If indeed this ceasefire is that, and it would seem to be that what's going on in Lebanon certainly doesn't represent a pause at all. But on a broader scale, you've really surrendered. The Strait of Hormuz has been literally surrendered to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They are charging both payment in crypto and payment in Chinese yuan for passage. And as part of a broader agreement, they want to continue with the toll that will be split with the Omanis and will essentially fund their reconstruction. They want that in replace of reparations. I mean, you know, Trump, for whatever goals he had, and I don't think he had any. I think he was just, as I've told you before, high on his own supply. He's crazy for these military flexes, and he's got a shallow, pretty boy train wreck of a Department of Defense head in Pete Hegseth, who just can't wait to blow stuff up. And indeed, Hegseth was one of the animating figures in the decision to go into Iran. I mean, he got some pushback, did Trump. The reporting I shared with you yesterday from the New York Times, where essentially, if you missed it, the Israelis came in and they met at the Situation Room in the White House, and they come in, Netanyahu, Mossad head, and they make their case, like the PowerPoint presentation pitch for Americans going into Iran with the Israelis. As you are aware, MBS also wanted it, the Emiratis wanted it. But the real pitch was made by the Israelis. And the reporting from the New York Times is really quite detailed. It has quotes and everything. Well, the following day, the intelligence community of America met with the president, met with his top people, and more to the point, they had a day to digest and in some way put the pitch that we had just heard the day before type thing into some framework and offer opinions. And there was pushback. There was pushback suggesting Kaine pushback, said, I don't know that this works. I read the stuff to you yesterday, but I thought the CIA director, Radcliffe, I give him mad respect. He said, Kaine said this is what the Israelis typically do. They will tend to exaggerate the ease with which stuff can be done and the urgency that stuff needs to be handled with. And Radcliffe made the point that this entire pitch that we just heard yesterday is crazy. It's absolute lunacy. And that was clear. But who was animating the impulses of Trump? Pete Hegseth. And so, again, the idea somehow that you could enter and get out in a 4 to 6 week period, which was part of the Israeli pitch, it just seems absurd. And now you see what is happening in terms of the real damage to America and to the world economy. They want $1 million per barrel of oil. I thought it was 2 million, Kim, but I guess it says here it's $1 million. They want the cryptocurrency equivalent of $1 a barrel of oil on board during this 2-week ceasefire, according to the Financial Times.
Yeah, I heard it was 2 million as well. It looks like they want to charge $1 per barrel of oil passing through the strait. And they said that's payable, as you mentioned before, in cryptocurrency or Chinese yuan. And since crude carriers are capable of carrying well in excess of 2 million barrels of oil, and it's $1 per barrel, that really adds up. So it would
I
be 2
see.
million. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The oil industry is beside themselves. This is what I was mentioning before. The oil industry, and Trump has always sort of felt himself aligned with the oil industry. He's a drill baby drill guy. They are completely unhinged when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. Here is the latest reporting from just this morning. I thought we won the war. The oil industry is pissed after Trump turns Hormuz into a toll booth for Iran. Free transit through international waters is a core tenet of the modern global economy, or at least it was until President Trump went to war with Iran, needed an off-ramp, and agreed to an Iranian ceasefire proposal that reportedly allows the country to charge a $2 million toll for tankers transiting the Strait of Hormuz. Oil industry executives saying to Politico that they're upset about the proposal and have been making their displeasure known to the White House. We didn't have to do that before, and I thought we won the war, an oil industry representative said. Any place you have access to the administration, you ask, what are you guys thinking? We told you about the $1 a barrel, according to the Financial Times. I guess that works out to $2 million per passage. Trump, meanwhile, is suggesting maybe the U.S. would also get in on the action and start collecting tolls, calling that prospect, quote, a beautiful thing. We're thinking of doing it as a joint venture, he told ABC's Jonathan Karl. It's a way of securing it, also securing it from lots of people. Trump is such a mess.
This is the question I had before for you, is if they pay in crypto, doesn't Trump own and his family own that company where all crypto transactions have to go through their company and they get a piece?
No, all crypto transactions can go through various different crypto transaction platforms. The one that we're talking about, which is Liberty Financial, I think it's called, that's the one owned by the Trumps.
Yeah.
That's where you trade if you want to wet the beaks of the Trumps. And if you're buying the meme coins that they launched at the beginning of the administration, which were basically just payoffs to the Trumps, those meme coins have to be traded on that platform. But if you're just trading in crypto, you can do it anywhere. You don't need to do it. And I'm sure they're not doing it on the Trump platform. You know what I mean? But yeah, go ahead.
So he won't personally benefit then if if crypto is the method of payment for this oil transport through the strait.
No, he won't. Now, you could say, well, the crypto arbitrage market will, because you'll have more and more people and more institutions trading in crypto, and there'll be demand for crypto. And for that reason, the crypto markets will begin to show an uptick in the value of crypto. Maybe in Bitcoin specifically, I guess is what the way they're going to do this. I'm not, but what actual benefit accrues to Trump is probably not relevant, because that won't be part of the crypto scene. But the ceasefire itself, it as I say, it never really was taking place in any reasonable way, given the fact that the Lebanon hostilities appear to be still on blast. And it's funny, when asked about Lebanon, I think J.D. Vance was kind of talking about that a bit. Give me cut two. This is a little bit of J.D. Vance, who's emerging as a figure who may be involved in these talks with Pakistan.
A lot of bad faith negotiation and a lot of bad faith, propaganda going on. I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case. What we said is that the ceasefire would be focused on Iran, and the ceasefire would be focused on America's allies, both Israel and the Gulf Arab states. Now, That said, the Israelis, as I understand it, again, I'm supposed to get a fuller report when I get on the plane, have actually offered to be, frankly, to check themselves a little bit in Lebanon because they want to make sure that our negotiation is successful. That's not because that is part of the ceasefire. I think that's the Israelis trying to set us up for success, and we'll, of course, see how that unfolds in the next few days. But look, if Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
Yeah, I also think that the Iranians have figured this out. The Iranians now have figured out that they can demand whatever they want. The Americans are in trouble. The Americans are stuck. The world needs the strait open. Iran controls the strait. And here is the ironic part. The bait that was associated with the weakness of Iran and the weakness of leadership that brought Trump and the Americans and Israelis in, you take out the leadership of Iran, and now, and again, we got them, then we replaced it, then we got the second level, the third level. There's nobody around to negotiate with, and now you have hardliners in who are harder line than the Iranian leadership you took out. The IRGC, they control that country now, in my judgment. I mean, based on everything I've read. And even if it is the natural heir to the throne, he is more radical than those he's replacing. But I don't know how relevant he is. We keep hearing about him. Clearly, the IRGC is in control. And so they are a potent military force in their own right. They have an ability to manage the country militarily again. And they are clearly managing the strait. So I think America, we're in real trouble. And when it comes to the moral high ground, I mean, we've lost it. We never had it to begin with. I think of the first moments of this war, we lost any moral high ground. And this is, I'm talking about Iran is this horrible outlaw nation that funds terrorism worldwide. All of that's true. But what is going on? Play cut 7 on the moral high ground question, if you would, please, Albert. This is cut 7.
The U.S. has been a moral leader for most of its history.
Caroline Levitt.
Wars against other governments, not against civilizations. How can the president claim that America can ever have the moral high ground if he's threatening to destroy civilizations and not casting wars as fights against other governments?
I think you should take a look at the actions of this president over the course of the past 6 weeks and the actions of our brave men and women in our United States military who have taken out essentially taken out the military of a rogue Islamic regime that has chanted death to America for 47 years, that has killed and maimed thousands of American soldiers over the course of the last 5 decades. The president absolutely has the moral high ground over the Iranian terrorist regime, and for you to even suggest otherwise is frankly insulting.
With all due respect, Caroline,
Go ahead.
with all due respect.
Go ahead, grateful for.
The United States is a moral leader in the world, given that
I was asked this exact same question by your colleague Andrew in the back, and I think, again, the insinuation by anyone in this room that Iran somehow has the moral high ground over the United States of America is insulting, considering the atrocities that they have committed against our people and our military over the past 5 decades.
Yeah, she just basically, she's a steamroller, but the rhetoric is really getting old. And the declaration of how great America is and how whatever we do is the righteous thing it's getting old and almost cartoonish. Play me cut 10 from Caroline Levitt, will you please, Albert?
With respect to the 2-week ceasefire announced by President Trump last night, this is a victory for the United States of America that the president and our incredible military made happen. From the very beginning of Operation Epic Fury, President Trump stated this would be a 4 to 6 week military operation to dismantle the military threat posed by the radical Islamic Iranian regime. Thanks to the unbelievable capabilities of America's war fighters, the United States has achieved and exceeded those core military objectives in just 38 days. The U.S. military destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, crushing the regime's ability to manufacture weapons that they and their proxies use to maim and kill Americans and terrorize the world. Iran's ability to build and stockpile ballistic missiles and long-range drones has also been set back by years compared to where it was 6 weeks ago prior to the launch of Operation Epic Fury.
Okay, so I would say this, and I'll play one more cut from her. We just know that a very small amount of that is true. As I mentioned before, it's not wrong that the American military took out a lot of the traditional military strength of Iran, but there's still a lot left. And we've also seen the power of this asymmetric battle waged with drones and with strategic decision-making along the lines of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. So the idea that you can just talk about military dominance, and clearly America has that, as the only measure of victory, we know that America hasn't been victorious because we're having to choke down this ridiculous plan, even if it holds, which completely permits the continued enrichment of uranium on the part of the Iranians and payment to the Iranians in the form of this toll that will go through the Strait of Hormuz and control of the Strait of Hormuz, which they didn't have prior to this entire thing. It's by no means clear that America gets anything from this. Play me the last cut from Caroline Levitt, which I think is cut 11, maybe?
Given the gravity of what he said yesterday, what was your understanding of what he meant when he said, this civilization is going to be eliminated?
I think it was a very, very strong threat from the president of the United States that led the Iranian regime to cave to their knees and ask for a ceasefire and agree to reopening the Strait of Hormuz. So it was a very strong threat that led to results. And as the Secretary of War stated at the Pentagon this morning, it was not an empty threat by any means. The Pentagon had a target list that they were ready to hit go on at 8 p.m. last night if the Iranian regime had not agreed to open the strait, which they did. And I think that's something we should all be grateful for.
Yeah, you better check those knees. I don't know that I saw the Iranians on their knees over this entire thing. The draft of the ceasefire, as you know, the statement, the draft statement about it, appears to have been drafted by the White House. That's the draft issued by the Pakistanis. I wanted to tell you how this is playing a bit in MAGA land, or in former MAGA land. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about just that, which Caroline Levitt was speaking of. And this is something we've been talking about. I've even been sharing you a little bit of stuff and media from the right over the last few days. And now it's really entered the mainstream. Here it is on CNN. Marjorie Taylor
Trump
Greene.
has been known for his bombastic rhetoric, right? He's been doing that for years. And you used to be a supporter. Now you're speaking out against him. But people might be asking, well, I mean, didn't you see this coming?
Well, you know, I've always been a supporter of President Trump for the policies. That's what I cared about. But once he became president, he changed his policies. What we campaigned on was no more foreign wars. And President Trump said he was going to be the peace president. Well, he's gone from being the peace president to the war president. And I don't support that at all. I'm not offended oftentimes by people's words. I mean, people on the right and the left have lots of different types of language and statements. However, it's their actions that is what I pay attention to. And the president lost my support when he covered up the Epstein Files and called me a traitor and wanted to primary me because I supported women that were raped at 16 and 18 years old, or 14 years old even. And I don't support the president in going to war in Iran. And what we campaigned on and what President Trump promised America was to put America first. And now we've got rising inflation, gas prices are going out of control, but we also have to put the blame on both parties. $100 in 2021 is now only $80 in 2026 because of the declining value of the dollar. So Pamela and Wolf, I blame both parties for this, and it's an absolute failure to the American people, but I cannot support a president that wants to murder an entire civilization of people.
You can blame both parties all you want. I understand. I think both parties, I think the American system is corrupt. It's full of money, and money has just corrupted our political system on such a grand scale. And Tom Hartman has come along later in the show, touches on this, but and talks a lot about it in his writings and on his show. But I really think at this moment there is a false equivalency, maybe the way to put it, to suggest, well, both parties are responsible. Really? Are they? I mean, maybe they're both responsible, but one has way more responsibility. I'm astounded that you could be anything but repulsed by the way that the Republicans have supported this guy and stood back and let this happen. It is truly loathsome. So, I mean, this is I think there's a moral imperative here, and you've got a president who is out of control. There is more and more of that MAGA right that is moving away from all of this. Play me cut 5. Here is the way in which the rescue mission, which was talked about for that pilot and for the airman who was downed with the pilot, is now being dismantled. The story, we talked about this. Remember I said, gee, it seems like a lot of hardware just to retrieve this one guy. I mean, it was a remarkable amount of hardware. This was Trump himself talking about how much hardware there was. It was insane amount. And so, sure enough, here is the BS of that official story being called out.
Finally able to activate his emergency transponder.
This is Hegseth.
His first message was simple, and it was powerful. He sent a message, God is good.
Now, that did not happen. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is once again gaslighting the nation. At least this time, he's not doing it in slam poetry format. But do you know why there's zero chance that the U.S. Air Force pilot that was downed by the Iranian Air Force systems sent a message that said, God is good? Because this is the communication device that a downed U.S. Air Force pilot has. It's called a CCEL or ANPRQ-7. And it is a technological marvel that guarantees GPS location, encrypted authentication, secured satellite connection, beacon mode for homing, and preset digital messaging. But do you know what it does not offer? Custom messaging. You see, it has no keyboard. So unless the Air Force pre-programmed the sucker with God is good before the mission started, there is no way for a pilot to send that type of message after his transponder becomes operational. But see, Pete Hegseth isn't interested in the truth. He's interested in gaslighting the more gullible slice of Americans in a desperate attempt to frame this war of choice as a religious battle, hoping to get at least those people to support a war we didn't need and we certainly didn't want.
So this is increasingly the tone that's being struck by Pete Hegseth, right? It's a holy war. And this should really concern many. I mean, the way in which Christian nationalism has woven itself through this messaging is of great concern because it justifies all things, right? That's why it again, they're not telling us the truth, says Linda Kunkel. That is the understatement of the show so far. Whiskey Pete lies all the time, says Adriana Sterling. Yeah, this is, I think, demonstrably the case, yeah.
And now, your comments.
I guess we're doing comments. All right. Fortunately, the gullible U.S. population segment is only about 1/3. It is true. We have a strong...
There's always been, in this country, 30 to 35% idiots.
It's true. Jim Avila is right. Crusades often end badly in the eyes of history. Isn't it true? Dogsy Dad. Thank you. It's a wild time. The doomsday clock is closer to midnight than ever, says Richard Delamater. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I needed a clock. I mean, you can kind of figure it out on your own. Richard Delamater with a $5 super chat. Thank you
Big
for that.
shout out.
Wouldn't this be great if this deal went down as one of the world's worst deals in history? His ego would be shattered, and that would be it. He's toast. Yeah, I mean, I wish it was just about his ego. I mean, I wish it was just about this deal affecting Trump. It doesn't. It affects the whole world. This whole thing is so linked to the world economy, the world ability to grow crops, fertilizer, the energy that the world depends on. I mean, it's cataclysmic. I mean, this is really catastrophic. So it's not just his reputation. I mean, I get it. He's a yahoo. He's a mad king, feeling an authoritarian flex, and he is supported by a party that is absolutely MIA. They are not there in any way to restrain the worst instincts of this president. It is shameful. And the problem is the collective shame that we as Americans will experience now is going to be something that we have to endure. It's not just his reputation. This is a reputational harm to America that will not be recovered. We will not recover from this, not in our lifetimes. The ugly American, the stereotype, he has created a huge amplification of every ugly stereotype of America. The bully on the block. We get what we want, and there's sort of an obscene quality to us just going in and wrecking things. Because that's all that's happened here. He went in, and with Pete Hegseth and the Israelis, they blew up a lot of stuff. No strategy, no goals. He couldn't even tell you what the goals were. He's had multiple shots at it. How many at-bats does this guy need? And now we have the world's energy being held hostage by the Revolutionary Guard. The Americans, we are the ones that are humbled. So all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put this Iran situation back together again for Trump and for America. This is a true tragedy, and the human toll is immense. Meanwhile, Lebanon is being blown up by the Israelis. They have their own agenda, and from the start, the Israeli agenda was different than the American agenda. But I was unclear as to what the American agenda even was, and it wasn't just me. Apparently, Trump didn't know what it was. I mean, I get that Hegseth's agenda is clear. It's blow stuff up, act cool. It's inexcusable. I know David Katz is here. He has to sit here and listen to me rant like that. I don't know, but I'll get Katz.
Why are you yelling?
I do want to say this about the Lebanon incursion. The Iranian president has said that Israel's strikes on Lebanon are, quote, a blatant violation of the U.S.-Iran ceasefire agreement, and their continuation would render negotiations meaningless. I mention that because I played you the cut from J.D. Vance saying, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. There's nothing about Lebanon in the ceasefire agreement. So there are already cracks in this ceasefire agreement. J.D. Vance is always saying, hey, ceasefires are always messy. That's a quote. And again, it doesn't appear that there's any sort of exit strategy. Why is anyone surprised about Christian nationalism? It's all part of the Heritage Project. Yeah, it was written in Project 2024. They told us 2025, I think is what they told us what they were going to do. It's true that it's true that much of what was authored in Project 2025 related back to the breadcrumbs were back to a Christian nationalism, which does underpin a lot of this stuff out of the Heritage Foundation. That's absolutely true. So, and I think this is worth noting. Scott says, kind of crazy. What could Trump do to alienate American voters even more? If Dems can't win in November, ruh-roh, assuming elections and some fairness. Yeah. And here's the reality. Vanessa says, thanks to this oil mess, I drove 8.5 miles yesterday so I could fill up my tank for $5.29 at Costco instead of the $5.79 in San Francisco. Yeah, that's the real story there. All right, smash the like button if you would, please, for us. It keeps us,
with your iron rod.
It helps us. Yeah, do it with your iron rod. And subscribe to our show and hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video. Hit it. You smash
with
it.
your iron rod.
It's a lot to smash when you think about it. And I want to welcome in our guest in a moment.
Thompson Show.
I did want to note that Sweet 106 Bakery is our. I'm going to send David Katz some Sweet 106 Bakery offerings. Mother's Day is coming, and you need to jump on this for mom, or if you're a mom, treat yourself to Sweet 106 Bakery's layered cupcakes. This is her own creation. Christy has won Cupcake Wars twice. It's a small business, Sweet 106, spelled S-U-I-T-E, like a suite of rooms, if you're just listening. Sweet106bakery.com. Use our discount code, MARK-T. They'll give you 15% off. Look at all the different flavoring. And now these layered cupcake cakes come in mini cakes. So you can order the normal size, which is the equivalent of 3.5 cupcakes, or the mini size, which is a cupcake and a half. There's your mini spring bundle. Get it for Mother's Day. But you better do it soon. Mother's Day is coming. I really wouldn't wait. Like, I would get this ordered in the next week or so for Mother's Day. Again, it's sweet106bakery.com. Mark T at checkout for 15% off. Sweet106bakery.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is the, my Sweet 106 Bakery Snickers is out for delivery. There you go. Hello, Karen. Another happy kid. Mark and David should do a bakery site visit and have Tony film it. Yeah, Katz and I should go out to the Sweet 106 Bakery place. That's it. That's a great idea. I'll take this last comment. Wes in Florida says, Christian nationalism is no different than radical Muslim extremism. Two extremes that try to justify violence in the name of God. In my judgment, any religious extremism falls into essentially the same category. So I can't argue with that. But you can name your religion, and the extremism, I think, is all of a kind. I just ordered the spring bundle for my mom for her birthday, says Vanessa Pacheco. With the Mark T code, that's the way to do it. And there's a link under this video that I think has the code already embedded. So if you forget, you have it. Anyway, sweet106bakery.com. This guy is the former federal prosecutor. He is now one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. He comes here on Thursdays. He now works as a defense attorney in Southern California. The brilliant David Katz, everyone.
Hi, great to be with you.
Thank you, David. Sorry for the wait. I wanted to ask you first about Pam Bondi. I guess she got the Evite and has hit no. She's not going to be attending the congressional party and views the subpoena as something of an annoyance because she says, I'm no longer Attorney General, so not my problem. Can you speak to the legality of this and what the reality is concerning that legality? That is to say, how much can her feet really be held to the fire legally?
I think her feet can be held to the fire totally. There are 5 Republican members of the House who joined the subpoena to her. And one of them, Nancy Mace, I think it is, from South Carolina, has already announced that we did not subpoena her as the Attorney General. We subpoenaed her as Pam Bondi. And Mark Thompson, David Katz, if we got a subpoena, you couldn't say, oh, I'm not doing the Mark Thompson show anymore. You're not being subpoenaed as the head of the Mark Thompson show. Your subpoena says Mark Thompson. The only thing that is going to give her a little bit of wiggle room, maybe for a couple of days or so, is that they're going to hold her in contempt if she doesn't show up and if she doesn't answer the questions, unless she wants to assert her rights under the Fifth Amendment. But unless she shows up and answers the questions, they're going to hold her in contempt. That's what they did with the Clintons, and eventually the Clintons capitulated and showed up. And of course, they didn't know anything that helped the Epstein investigation, as we knew, especially with Hillary. None of it would, that it was nothing but a performance by the Republican chairman, what's his name, Comer. But obviously, Bondi really does know something, which is very relevant. And so she'll be held in contempt if she doesn't show up. So I think they just want to cover their bases. So they'll probably issue her a new subpoena through her personal attorney that has the date. And that's a lot better than give her the defense that, oh, it was all so confusing and I went from being Attorney General, and, arguably get out of the contempt citation. So they'll cover their bases but they will get Pam Bondi in here. And let me just say this. I hope you split the screen again, Mark, when you send this out to your followers with me and Pam Bondi, because it was the most hits I ever had on the Mark Thompson show. You had me on one side, her on the other, and I think they had me coming out of my mouth like a bubble saying something like incompetent and corrupt. And let me stand by that assessment that I made when she was in power. She is incompetent and corrupt, and she knows a lot about the Epstein Files. Remember, she's the one who said they were sitting on her desk about a year ago, this list of the Epstein file as targets or people of interest. And then she said, no, it was all a confusion, and no, they weren't really there. There was something about a list. But they want to know what happened with that, and they want to know, she claims she put hundreds of agents on sifting through these. Even with that, they were late, they were incomplete. Even with that, they divulged photographs that never should have been divulged of young women, girls. Some of them were naked. They didn't even do a good job at what they were supposed to do. And let me point out, last two things, there are 2 or 3 million pages, I think it is. It's either files or pages, but there's 2 or 3 million that have not been disseminated despite this legislation. And the last thing is, I do love this line. They said, what do you mean the war in Iran didn't have any objectives, didn't achieve the objectives for Trump? It achieved his #1 objective, to keep the Epstein Files out of the news. Well, guess what? With all this debacle, this disaster for America that we've just suffered over there, it's back in the news, Donald. It's back in the news. We want to know why you were the person most mentioned in there and why your cronies' names still haven't come out.
Well, this is interesting because it's true that, first of all, it's very true that Bondi has weaponized the Justice Department in so many ways. And I'd suggest that the Republicans sort of sat by while all that happened. But boy, this Epstein file mess, she stepped in it. And that's the thing, ultimately, that, as you say, has brought her down in a big, big way. And I mean, brought her down in terms of public opinion and Republican opinion, too. So when she's being subpoenaed, as you've suggested, with the Republicans actually party to that subpoena and party to all of that investigation, that's all because of the Epstein Files. That's not because of weaponizing the Justice Department and getting rid of career prosecutors because they had something to do with January 6th prosecutions or whatever. It has to do only with the Epstein Files. So it's bizarre how this thing trumps everything else. But what I wanted to mention to you also in that, yeah, go ahead.
Mark, can I tell you real quick why I think she got fired just before we move on past Bondi?
But let me just throw in one last thing, which is that Todd Blanche says that the files are not coming out. So he's the one who's replacing her now, at least on an interim basis. He says, forget it. We're done. Epstein Files through. They're under lock and key, and we're not going to see anything more. Now, please go ahead.
Well, he's going to be in violation of the statute, and they're going to call him in. You know, he's still got his job. He was also subpoenaed to come in, so he's going to tell what he knows. But he's going to say, "Well, Bondi did this. You know, the other dude did it." Isn't that great? Our deputy attorney general, now acting attorney general, the people's lawyer, is going to come in like a skell. Like the guy on trial for criminal conduct, to say the other guy did it. I don't know. It was Bondi who was around, and she did. Bondi's not here. Well, why don't you get Bondi in here?
Meantime, he went to Florida, met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and then moved her to to the yoga retreat that she's staying in now.
So I guess the things that I wanted to say about Bondi is just that she does know a lot. She'll have to come in there. And Todd Blanche also knows a lot. But I think I know why she got fired, because Blanche said it's a mystery. Only Trump knows why he fired her. And I think she was just, she was that batter who hit below the Mendoza line. She didn't deliver. For whatever reason, she didn't get the hits that Trump wanted. She didn't nail Adam Schiff, who's absolutely not guilty of anything. She didn't nail Lisa Cook, the Fed governor. She didn't nail Comey, Letitia James, the attorney general there in New York. All of those people that she went after, that was a disgrace. And she'll have her accounting, believe me, Pam Bondi will. So I think Trump just said, you know what? They can't hit any lower than Bondi did at carrying out my agenda. It wasn't that she was, underzealous. She tried hard, but she failed. And Trump just said, you know what? Let's see. The next person can't do any worse than her. But I don't think that they're going to put Todd Blanche up there. They're going to have this gimmick. And they've had a gimmick here in the Central District of California, in Southern California, to keep someone in as basically the U.S. attorney who's never been through Senate confirmation. And I don't think that they're going to risk putting Blanche through there for Senate confirmation. They'll ask about Ghislaine Maxwell. They'll ask about the rest of the Epstein files. They will grill him as he deserves to be grilled. So I think they're going to use this ruse that they can keep him there for 210 days or something like that. I don't think you read about all these people who might be the attorney general, and that would be two bad things, I think, for Trump. One, he'd have to put somebody on top of Todd Blanche, and he really wants Todd Blanche's criminal defense attorney up there. And I want to say one more thing about Todd Blanche. I don't mean to cut into your time, Mark, but I just have all these thoughts about Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche is the worst person to be in that job. He's worse than Pam Bondi. He's worse than other people for this reason. He has a duty of loyalty to Donald Trump personally. He was his criminal defense lawyer. When you're someone's lawyer, especially their criminal defense lawyer, you have a duty of loyalty to them that endures. So if something came out that really hurt Trump, I mean, there it was in black and white. No one could ignore it, okay? He's got to not just say, oh, well, no one could ignore it, I'm putting it out. He's got to think, wait a second, I still have loyalty to Donald Trump. He's my client. I have this enduring loyalty to Donald Trump, which you don't lose because you stop being someone's criminal defense lawyer. I had that with my former clients forever. And if something came along that really hurt them, I would have a balance, right, that I'd have to do. Trump's criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, will always cut the cake in favor of his loyalty toward Trump. And Trump knows that. Trump gets that part of the game.
Oh, no, the more lavishly he praises Todd Blanche, the clearer that is. And by the way, I always call Todd Blanche his fixer because Michael Cohen's gone. Now you've got Todd Blanche, and Todd Blanche is now running the Justice Department, as you say, with Bondi out. It is worth noting, just as a footnote to some of this Epstein stuff, that Bill Gates is scheduled to testify before this oversight committee, and he's testifying around the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. And, he says, as so many do, hey, I knew Jeffrey Epstein, but I'm not someone who knew anything about all this other crap that was going on. So, even as Bondi shakes the subpoena, Gates is going to honor the subpoena. I think he's going to be June 10th is the date that he's going to be there and testifying before Congress. Yeah.
Rightly or wrongly, this is what the Republicans have wanted to do with the Epstein files. They wanted to make what hay they could. Their whole theory when they ran in 2024 was that the terrible Democrats, it was all Democrats that were in the Epstein files. That's what the far right was saying. The MAGA people, the Bongino types, were saying, boy, we get power, we're going to reveal everything. It's going to show nothing but one Democrat after another. So this is the playbook because, as I say, rightly or wrongly, Bill Gates is known as a Democrat. He's a huge, he's a billionaire, but he's a huge donor to, help people in Africa and stuff like that. He's done wonderful, wonderful work.
Yeah, he's kind of his own little USAID that
yes.
Trump, yeah. So
yes, and done wonderful things. And he's going to be dragged through the coals and made to look like a pervert and stuff like that. And then they're going to try to say, well, you see, that's what the Democrats are like. So that's the playbook right now. You look who they've dragged through the coals, Clinton, Hillary Clinton, now Bill Gates. And it's all going to be part of a narrative, which is totally false. Think about this. If you were Jeffrey Epstein, if he was nothing else, he was very clever and conniving. He'd make sure that people like Bill Gates and Bill Clinton didn't know anything about the illegal things he was doing with young girls.
I also just feel as though this entire exercise ignores the guy who shows up in the Epstein files more than anybody else, and that's Donald Trump. He's in there 1 million times, literally 1 million. I'm not just pulling that number out. And the idea that, you jump over Trump to get to all of these other people, it's just laughable. And that just speaks to the way this has become a political football.
One more thing, Mark.
Yeah,
one more thing.
Yeah, please.
There's been an issue about, well, why haven't, it's been covered recently, why haven't more people been indicted? And people say, well, now we're hearing from a true white collar criminal defense attorney why he thinks other people haven't been indicted. But that part of what Todd Blanche has said, I do accept. That there just were not, cases that were strong enough to pass, beyond a reasonable doubt against people besides Ghislaine Maxwell and, of course, Epstein. When you look at some of the, and they say, well, in Europe, they've certainly made hay out of it. Well, no, in Europe, they brought 2 corruption cases, Mark. They haven't found somebody else was involved in, having sex with young girls, or covering up having sex with young girls. The case against former Prince Andrew and against this minister over in the UK, they have to do with corruption, like leaking documents for profit, and that they've derived from the Epstein files. But they're not the sexual sort of thing that the survivors are interested in, that we want to certainly do so that we help the survivors, and so there aren't survivors like them again. The UK hasn't gone after, as I understand it, anybody like that, and it's hard to prove cases beyond a reasonable doubt. People say, well, they brought his lawyer and accountant in there, and I paid very close attention. It was interesting to me, someone who'd been the lawyer and the top accountant for Jeffrey Epstein. And they really, in my opinion, they didn't have a criminal case against them. They thought one of them maybe structured one transaction. People do not get prosecuted, thank goodness, in this country, because they walk into a bank with a check for $8,000 and $4,000, and they put the $8,000 in one day and the $4,000 the next day. People get prosecuted, Mark, because they do 1,000 checks of $9,500 day after day. That's generally the pattern of the prosecutions.
I'm glad that you talk about the money and you talk about the information in relation to the British stuff, because it's true that there is a distinction between that and the other. And it's interesting too, just in relation to Blanche. Blanche is saying, well, I have something from him on the Department of Justice, where he now runs, right, because Bondi is out, talking about, in a way, the not only the right that he has, but the duty that he has to pursue a vengeful agenda on the part of the president and, of course, the American people. It's cut 8, please, Albert.
Thousands of ongoing investigations and prosecutions going on in this country right now. And it is true that some of them involve men, women, and entities that the president in the past has had issues with and that believe should be investigated. That is his right, and indeed it is his duty to do that, meaning to lead this country. And so I do not view this as pressure. I do not view this as something that is going to keep me up at night, except to make sure that we are investigating every case that we have to the fullest extent of the law and using all the resources we can. We have thousands of ongoing investigations and prosecutions going on in this country right now.
So it's his duty, David. He's got to go after those that oftentimes can be perceived as foes of the president. But
these will be, Mark, these will be words that we'll remember in 2029. You'll be sure to play that cut quite often in 2029 when the Democrats are in power and when they go after, let's see, Blanche, Bondi, Kash Patel, and just go down the list of people that they certainly will feel compelled by Todd Blanche's reasoning to throw all of the resources at people who may be perceived as enemies from the Trump administration too, of the Democrats newly in power. But it's all going to be fine, and Todd Blanche will have made think about precedent. What goes around comes around, and that is the law of that's why people don't make bad decisions like the one that Todd Blanche is making. That's why they don't hound their political enemies, not because they're all such nice people, but because they're usually prescient and prudent enough to realize that what goes around comes around. And so when people say, oh my God, they can't believe, and this is what they'll say on Fox, the new Democratic McCarthyism going after all the people from the Trump 2 administration, be sure to play Todd Blanche's clip and some of the other clips, because that was the standard that they wanted to set.
Sure. And there have been resignations at the Department of Justice. There have been some huge numbers of people who've left the Department of Justice because of what's happening there. And there was a DOJ resignation this week. I believe it was from the Department of Homeland Security, but it's in relation to a DOJ demand to have voter rolls released, of sensitive voter data released. And now the chief FOIA officer, that's the Freedom of Information Act, and senior component official for privacy for the DOJ Civil Rights Division, now leaving, and the resignation is just now coming to light. this is as there are demands for this voter information, you get this high-profile resignation. Any thoughts on this?
Oh, sure. When people talk about people leaving the government, the scale of it is so much higher than people can imagine. You take the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, Mark, 75% have left. Now, some of those were the buyouts, under Doge, all that. A lot of them were people who just, they've changed the Civil Rights Division under Trump from where they went after the civil rights of the most vulnerable and made sure that, people, black, brown, people being discriminated against, poor people in certain areas, LGBTQ, that their rights were protected. They've turned it all on its head, Mark. And so since they've turned it on its head, 75% have left. The U.S. Attorney's Office here in the Central District of California has had about half the people leave, half the attorneys leave. There's never been anything like it. And if you don't believe me, believe this first
Never been anything like this.
Yeah. Okay.
First assistant acting a U.S. attorney. And he was on your old friend Alex Michelson, used to be on your show.
Yeah.
I saw him on CNN Friday night with the as acting first assistant, whatever he is in this district, was on there basically saying, half the people have left the office. They don't want to, he said it in some way, but it was obviously what he meant was because they don't want to do Trump's agenda. And he said to people, if you're at some law firm and you want to get into court, come on down. We want people who are hungry. Hungry for what, Mark? Hungry? That when I joined the U.S. Attorney's Office and the other people, we weren't hungry for anything other than this tremendous honor if we could get it, if we could be hired. But no, we were not solicited on TV shows that we should come on down and put in our application.
Well, it's hungry for justice, David Katz, and it's hungry for the president's agenda, David Katz, and to try to see this country through the decadent Democrat liberal agenda and rescue it from all of that. Now, I just want to mention that, in relation to the resignation that we were talking about, this is this DOJ move to try to get sensitive voter data. When I'm talking about sensitive data, I'm talking about Social Security numbers, dates of birth, addresses, and some of this stuff violates privacy laws, and this is why you saw this resignation of this senior privacy guy there at DOJ.
I didn't really hit your question head on. Sorry, Mark. That was a kind of an impressionistic response.
No,
by
that's
me.
all right. I thought you answered it really well. I was just trying to make the point that the specific things that got into this conversation in terms of the demands from the DOJ are unprecedented. This is really moving and encroaching into areas of privacy that Americans have always enjoyed.
Well, there's this huge thing with Trump. Trump is no civil libertarian. He's no libertarian. And he is like big state. He's what we were all terrified about with the Patriot Act, people who want to have our privacy. And I think he's deluded some of his followers who are libertarians, who do believe against the Patriot Act, that sort of thing. And who do believe in privacy. But he's been a terrible president, especially this second time around, Mark, from Doge going into the computers and taking records. And some of the judges should have stopped that right off the bat. And I was so frustrated that they didn't enter TROs fast enough. I think Doge and his team got a lot of that information and are going to do some kind of havoc with it if they haven't already. And now they're getting into these things. They're trying to do it legally by saying it's going to overcome the Privacy Act. I think there's 8 million federal employees that they're trying to get their records, very personal records, including medical records. They're supposed to do some study of medical efficiency. Oh, come on. No, what they're going to look at once they have those records is to see who got an abortion, who on the federal payroll got an abortion, tried to get an abortion. And you can tell that from people's medical records, whether they've had like trans counseling or anything like that, whether they've taken any kind of, there's people always, freak out over the surgical means. That's not what it's usually about. It's usually about just taking certain pills. You have prescriptions. Were they taking any of these trans type prescription medication? It sounds utterly far out. The federal government is going to look over that. Yes, they're going to get 8 million people's very personal medical records. They're trying to get that through a court. And then some of these records, Mark, they want to share with ICE. so that they can figure out people's addresses. And one of these federal judges in one of these cases said, well, these records that you're going to get, you're not going to use that to locate people and go arrest them without a warrant. And the federal prosecutor was honest enough to finally say, you know, you can't tell what other agencies are going to do. Translated means, yes, exactly, that's what they're going to do. They're going to use these addresses and other records to find out where people are, to find out that they're allegedly illegally in the country, and to go to their houses without warrants. You know, we've stopped having the terrible publicity that we had from Minneapolis, but that doesn't mean that ICE has stopped. ICE has just tried to stay out of the news more, but they're more stealthily doing a lot of awful things to people in this country and violating people's rights. And that's what the Democrats are trying to stop by reining in ICE. And I think that's still kicking around, right, Mark? They still haven't really reached any resolution of that. They got the TSA working again, maybe, but doing something about the masks and the judicial warrants. That's what the Democrats want to do, to make them wear masks and to make them get judicial warrants. And that is so controversial. The Republicans and Trump are blocking that these people should have no masks and that they should get judicial warrants in America. It's unbelievable. That's the Republican position.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. It seems just patently indefensible, but you know, that is the position. I wanted to just mention when we talk about privacy and we talk about ongoing investigations, there was this sheriff, and there is this sheriff in Riverside County in California. It's like maybe, what would you say, an hour maybe east of L.A., and the California Supreme Court is now saying that this sheriff has to pause his investigation. Now, what he did is he seized all of these voter records. There are a lot, 650,000 of these ballots that he seized just last month. He said he was investigating potential fraud in the special election in California. I think it was a blatant play to get into the Trump administration and get into some kind of, sweet-ass role in the federal government. You know, he's seeing all of these functionaries rise in Trump land, and he wanted to, he has big political aspirations. He's running for governor. And in any case, now the court, which is where I get to you, has said you have to pause your investigation into this alleged fraud until when? I asked you, David Katz.
Well, this is really an important story, and I'm glad that you're covering it. And it's not just a California local story, because they'll start doing this around the country if sheriffs can get away with it. Sheriffs tend to be, they're law and order. If that's any post around that the Republicans can win, it's sheriff. So there's a lot of Republican sheriffs, a lot of Trumpy sheriffs around the country. And we have one out in Riverside County, going toward the desert. What he's done is seize these ballot boxes because he wants to count the vote himself for the, this is the redistricting, which the redistricting won overwhelmingly out here. The idea that any votes out in little Riverside County, I mean, little compared to the immensity of California, would swing that vote is absurd. So obviously this is purely performative. The guy is running for governor. Actually, he struck out. He didn't get Trump's endorsement. Trump endorsed that. You won't imagine what station he was a commentator on, the person that Trump endorsed, another Fox. He might have been the evening weekend, but whatever. He was some Fox correspondent, just like Crazy Hegseth. Anyway, so what happened with this, two interesting things with this. Number one, the sheriffs have way too much power. And I had one of these cases where they raided a lawyer's office and the case went nowhere. And it was just somebody who knew a sheriff who was harassing this lawyer that I represented. And I was shocked to see that they don't assign a DA to cases like that. There's actually not a DA who says, wait a second, Mr. Sheriff, before you present this to some judge, let me take a look at whether this is under the law, whether this is righteous, whether there should be a search warrant. The sheriff just runs to some judge. And of course, you think some friendly judge, they know what judge they're running to and presenting the affidavit to. So first, we're trying to get a hold of, the state's trying to get a hold of the affidavit. Let's see what someone said under oath was the basis for seizing these ballots, because we suspect it was just some right-wing advocacy group that said, like Trump always said, a lot of people are talking about, the vote wasn't fair. That turns out to be what the affidavit is. A lot of people are talking. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the Attorney General, a Democrat, Bonta here, has told this sheriff, don't do this. This is against the law. You're violating the laws of this state. And he won't back off, the sheriff who wants to be governor. He won't back off. And so finally, the case went to the California Supreme Court. It has 7 members. I think they're all Democrats because we've had Democrats in the governorship here for so long. Anyway, they said, stop what you're doing to the sheriff. They issued an injunction telling the sheriff, stop counting the votes, hold everything where it is, preserve everything that you did take. And then the California Supreme Court in the next few weeks is going to review that decision. I'm almost certain they're going to say that no, local sheriff has a right to go grab the ballot boxes and to start, basically tampering with them. Who on earth trusts this process to ever be fair? He's not an election official. His people aren't trained to do this, to know how to handle them. And so you figure all they're going to do is either nothing, or they're going to come out with some story that the vote was. And you know where Trump is going with this. He wants to get a few decisions like this around the country, a few things like this around the country. He'll weave that into a narrative that, all they do is steal the votes. All they do is pack the ballot boxes. You can't trust the elections, send the ICE out to the elections, tamper with the elections, Trump. And try to use it as a pretext to either not respect the result of the election or something even worse than that.
Yeah, I think that just sums it up so beautifully. I mean, it's agenda-driven, and I said it at the time when he first seized him for an investigation. Investigation? What? Your sheriff's office can investigate a voter for? There are election officials who might be able to do it, but you don't have it. You can go person to person in your goddamn sheriff's office, and there's nobody there who, I get it. They'll investigate homicides. They'll investigate, speeding infractions, whatever it might be. But and maybe some really serious stuff, but not voter fraud. That you're just not. So this is clearly so way out of bounds. But again, it falls into a category. And speaking of out of bounds, tell me how Steve Bannon, who had a conviction, he got it was with a jury. He got a conviction on his contempt of Congress. It now looks as though it's going to be vacated by the Supreme Court decision. It appears that they want to allow him to vacate it.
Well, this is Ask the Law Professor. So follow this carefully. A judgment is not final until it's been finally reviewed. And so your conviction, whatever it is, being found guilty as Bannon was, being sentenced, is not final if it's on appeal to the Court of Appeals. And it's also not final if it's on appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court and if the U.S. Supreme Court takes it for review. So it was not final. So the Supreme Court didn't do anything to help Bannon. Trump did something to help Bannon. Trump's Justice Department is going into court, has been going into court and saying, dismiss this prosecution. And that's what the Supreme Court had no choice about it. That's why it was an easy decision for them, because the case was still alive. It wasn't final. It was there for review by the U.S. Supreme Court. And then the Trump administration said, kill this prosecution. And they killed it from the root. So they're in the district court saying, dismiss this prosecution. We, the prosecution, no longer want to prosecute. Once you have a prosecution that's not final and the prosecution no longer wants to prosecute, the appellate courts have no choice but to dismiss it. So that's why this is like better than a pardon for Trump. If this had become final, Trump would have had to give him a pardon. Since it didn't become final, it was still hanging out there in the U.S. Supreme Court awaiting review. Trump could kill it by just ceasing to prosecute.
Well, I guess that's just justice in America, I want to ask you, our time is so short, I want to ask you a bunch of things.
Can I say one more thing about Bannon before you get that? Just really quickly about Bannon.
Of course.
So I've been touting for a long time this idea that we should have state and federal prosecutions. Why does Manafort only get prosecuted federally when what Manafort did was so many state crimes? Why didn't he get prosecuted in state court? Some of these other people that Trump pardons, by the way, they announced when they were on with Alex Michelson and the first assistant, whatever he is, acting U.S. attorney here, Michelson, he said, the governor hasn't done anything about fraud, and we're doing something. The feds are doing something about it. And then Michelson read the statement by the governor and said, we're doing a lot of things about fraud. We haven't given licenses to these hospice centers, and we're investigating them carefully. And all the feds are going to do is make a big hoop-de-doo, and then Trump's going to pardon these people, these millionaire scammers from these hospice centers. So he read that to the first assistant U.S. attorney, but he didn't press him on it. And Asali was able to sidestep the question. But you were asking me about, what was the last thing, Mark, there?
No, I was just going to say to you that on the way out here, because our time is short, that the ballroom is getting some pushback from the National Trust. They're saying that no national security emergency exists for resuming work on the White House ballroom. Now, you make the distinction, I thought so well, that the National Trust for Historic Preservation and a judge's order, these are different things. There are the different parties to this entire matter of both the destruction of the White House and the building of the ballroom. And so I guess it's the judge's order that has to really be respected more than the protestations, if you will, of the organizations like the Historic Preservation, the National Trust.
Well, this is a Katsadamus, but it's not an easy one. So I'm going to take a point on this one if I get this one right. First, I predicted that the district judge, Richard Leon, who's a fellow I've known since before he became a judge and very intelligent, wise person. And I thought he was going to rule this way, and he did rule this way, that simply Congress has to approve such a major change like this in a federal building. And noting, of course, that Trump is not the owner of the White House as he acts. He's the steward of the White House, and he cannot make a change of this level, even if he does extort contributions from private people. Supposedly, he's gotten some foreign European company to donate the steel. What a farce!
To be clear, that's the judge's. That's the judge's message. That's the judge's decision.
Right.
That okay. Just want to be clear.
The judge's message is that he has to stop.
Right.
And that as to this bunker that's down in there, of course they can continue to build the bunker if they need to have the bunker. But the fact that they want to keep working on the bunker doesn't mean that they could build the ballroom. That was obviously a play, a scam by Trump, and it didn't work because they got a very smart judge. Now they're up on an emergency appeal that says, you know, you really, part of it's hilarious. Part of it is like, can you imagine this eyesore that's right next to me? Well, of course, Trump didn't think about the eyesore. He wanted to not ask permission so that he could just get as far along as possible and then argue, I'm too far along. You can't stop me now. And oh, by the way, look what a huge eyesore I created if you stop me now. This is every bully, every person who doesn't want to follow the rules. This is what they want to do, just like Trump. Guess what? It didn't work for Trump this time. So now he's got this appeal panel. And the reason I'm making this guess is I know who's on the appeal panel. And there's one very Trumpy judge on it who's a knee-jerk, anything Trump wants to do. But guess what? There are two other judges on it who I think will follow the law, and they will say that he has to go to Congress. And I think when Trump has to go to Congress, he won't get approval, Mark. You don't see Congress members standing up, Republicans, and saying that this is not a good idea, a waste of funds, something that doesn't have to be done, certainly doesn't have to be done on the scale that it's being done. But I think the Republican votes, the vote would be closer to the election when they're up in the House again. And I don't think they're going to approve it. So I think that the appellate court is going to back up Judge Leon, not allow the construction to go forward, except things very much limited to the bunker, if there's really work that has to be done on the bunker. I think the U.S. Supreme Court will not take this case. I just think they don't want that eyesore will be known forever, right? As you remember, there were Hoovervilles. This will be like Scotusville. Scotusville will be that huge disaster and mess over there that the U.S. Supreme Court's allowed. I don't think they need it. I think it then goes to Congress. I think Congress doesn't approve it. And we're going to have our beautiful East Wing back, come the Democrats.
You have always some kind of sunny outlook. I hope you're right. He'll still be able to concentrate on the arch, right? He can build that arch. Yeah, David Katz?
Let's get to the arch next week, Mark.
Okay, great talking to you. Thank you for being here always, David. We'll watch for you on all the different media outlets. You're so brilliant everywhere you show up, and we'll see you next Thursday. David Katz, everyone. Bye-bye, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert and Kim are with me here. It is a Thursday. We're watching a fragile ceasefire-ish thing happen. It's now Israelis saying that, you know, they'll sit down. Again, they're parties to this whole thing too. So they say they're going to talk to those parties involved with Lebanon, but meanwhile they're all in
it's
on
a mess.
Hitting Hezbollah. You know,
it's a mess. Lebanese officials say, listen, we're not going to negotiate when we're under fire. Netanyahu's saying they want to begin direct talks. Well, you've got to stop shooting in order for the talks to begin with the Lebanese, because that's their stipulation. So it's very messy.
Yeah. I'm just to the end of my allotted coffee.
Oh no, we gotta make more. I have my mango tea today.
Mango tea for Kim, the El Gato espresso for me today. But I love all of their blends. And the great thing about Coachella Valley Coffee is that there are tasting profiles under all their beans. It's all hand roasted. This is a boutique roastery. This is not a discount chop shop. The Eclipse Blend French Roast. Bold. Oh, yes. It's so wonderful. Explodes. Molasses wood smoke. Dark, rich. Oof. Love it. May have to go for a second cup. All organic, ethically sourced from women-owned farms, as mentioned, the teas and the coffees. Check them out. Also, there are spices. Coachella Valley Coffee is, to me, the supreme, the very best. You decide. Try them. I think you're going to, I get so much email on Coachella Valley Coffee. Again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. There are links to CoachellaValleyCoffee.com under this video. Use our discount code. I love that Clarity Blend. Thank you for showing that, Albert. Use our discount code MARKT. You'll get 10% off. I really want you to get that 10% off. Sometimes it's more economical. You know, you'll get a 5-pound bag or a 2-pound bag, or you'll get tea and coffee. You get, or a subscription. You'll discount it 10% no matter what you get there. If it's merch, you'll get 10% off it. Everything 10% off with Mark T at checkout. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Tom Hartman, the brilliant Tom Hartman. Coming up, a lengthy conversation with my pal Tom. Check it out.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is without peer, in my judgment, one of the great progressive voices ever. Such a great communicator. He knows so much, and he's got this across-the-fence style of speaking. It just is so very effective, and he's one of the most prolific writers. He's always got a book. Either he just finished one or there's another one coming. I'm so delighted to have him on regularly. He's the great Tom Hartman, everyone.
Hey, Mark.
Tom.
Great to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
great to
inviting
have you join us. Who Killed the American Dream is your book that people can now pre-order. It's still months away, I guess, but congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it comes out in July 7th.
So, I mean, the Hidden History series is, you're always within like an arm's length of that in my house. You were so many of those, and they're all so terrific and so readable. I think that's one of the gifts you have, making complex subjects, or what are thought of as complex subjects, very approachable. So I want to jump right into the complexities, frankly, of this ridiculousness in the Middle East. It's so grim. It's so very serious. It appears that Donald Trump was the perfect guy for Benjamin Netanyahu and Mossad to ply their trade, which is to try to convince U.S. presidents to join them in this Iran military flex.
Yeah, they've been working on it since Clinton.
Exactly. So many presidents said no, and yet they found the right guy in Trump. I think he was, coming off the high off of Venezuela and Iran, right? And there are just so many ways in which he appeared to be doing things unchecked. And somehow I think he thought he could get into that same category. And wow, it sure isn't.
Yeah, no, it's really a grim story, Mark. And I don't think that we can separate Jared Kushner's role out of this. Netanyahu, back in the 80s, when he used to visit New York before he was a major politician, he was just a diplomat or a businessman, used to sleep in Jared Kushner's bed. I mean, literally, he Jared would sleep on the couch and Netanyahu would sleep in his bedroom. And old family friends going way back. And then you got Steve Witkoff, who has been making regular pilgrimages to Moscow without the help of an American translator, without the help, just using Putin's translator, without any advice from the State Department or whatever, who has apparently become very close to Putin, who's one of the major beneficiaries of this, if not the major beneficiary of this. And these two guys were negotiating with Iran, and Iran thought they were good faith negotiations. And what they had worked out, according to the Omanis, who were the mediators, these, were right in the middle of this. This was all going on in Oman. According to the Omanis, what they worked out was a better deal than the JCPOA, a better deal than Obama had in terms of the United States' interests. No missiles, no nuclear inspectors, dialing back their hostility toward Israel, just all kinds of cool stuff. And apparently Netanyahu and Kushner were conspiring to go along with pretty much anything Iran was willing to do so that they could have a deal that would have to go to Iran, so that the council, the leader and all his guys would have to get together in one place to figure out if they were going to accept it. And that's when Netanyahu sent in a missile and took out a city block and killed 50 people, and decapitated the senior leadership, thinking that would cause regime change, which of course it didn't. It actually hardened the regime. And Trump just went along with this, and I'm sure that he went along with it on Kushner's advice. I mean, he's his son-in-law. Trump doesn't trust anybody other than his family. So they finally found a president who was stupid enough to do what Netanyahu wanted.
That just draws it out so beautifully, because there are so many parties that individually benefit, Kushner chief among them.
Oh, yeah, he's trying to get another $5 billion out of the Middle East. And I mean, literally, publicly, at the same time that, by the way, it wasn't just Israel that wanted this strike, it was also Saudi Arabia. MBS has been lobbying for this for at least a decade. And surprise, surprise.
And MBS wants us to stay there. I mean, I don't think MBS wants this operation wrapped up at all. So the Israelis and the Emiratis, perhaps you could argue, and also the Saudis are kind of all leading that charge. But this is a mess for America. And as you say, we could have had such a great deal if the concern was legitimately to restrain Iranian nuclear ambitions, and yet that all evaporated. It appears it was just a ruse. And now we're in this place where I don't know if America gets anything, assuming that the ceasefire/peace agreement can actually be forged. You don't have any restriction on nukes, and you don't have any restriction on the Iranian ability to continue to control the strait.
Well, the big problem is now Iran has basically won. I mean, they didn't control the strait before this invasion. It was an international waterway that regularly had military ships from dozens of different countries going through it. Now not only did they control it, but they're charging tolls, $2 million a ship to go through it. So number one, their position has been tremendously strengthened. Number two, we killed the old guy, his son, who was, watched his wife get killed by the Israelis in the same attack, his father get killed, his mother get killed, and I've heard that one of his kids got killed, although I haven't been able to find confirmation of that. He's not only more radical than his father was, and younger, he's in his 50s, he's going to be around for a hell of a long time, but he's also seriously pissed off. Right. And, he's now leading the government. And if you think this guy is going to cut a deal with Donald Trump after Trump just spent, a month proving that we're basically a paper tiger. I mean, yeah, we can blow a whole bunch of crap up and we can commit war crimes, I guess. Well, we have been committing war crimes all along. This whole entire thing is a war crime. There was no attack against us. We had no justification for going in. What we did is we vindicated Putin's strategy with Ukraine. Just attack another country and say, hey, they bothered me. I was worried about them. The bottom line is that I don't think that Iran is going to negotiate. I think they're going to. I mean, it looks to me like this is going to get worse and worse and worse. Iran is now, because Israel is bombing Lebanon, and Iran was saying Lebanon was part of the deal, and Pakistan is saying Lebanon was part of the deal. And that part of the deal was published, and Trump had said, yes, I agree to that. But Israel said, screw that, we're not part of this deal. They're bombing the crap out of Lebanon. They killed over 100 people this morning, took out a bunch of, and these are civilians, by the way. Netanyahu is committing war crimes himself right now, right in front of the world. Because that happened, Iran now has thrown drones and missiles at Saudi Arabia, at UAE, at Qatar, as I recall, one of the other countries, and one of the third country in the region. I don't know that they've done a lot of damage yet. I think most of their stuff has been intercepted. But this is not good. And they closed the strait again. And where does this go? I mean, is this the point where Trump starts talking to his people about nuclear weapons? And then you get the stories that we're hearing from third parties that the senior officials in CENTCOM, the 3-4 star generals, are telling Trump, we're not down with war crimes. Ain't going to happen. So this could get very hairy.
And in the meeting that preceded this, there's been some pretty great reporting in the New York Times side with that meeting that took place in the Situation Room, at which Kushner and Witkoff is just Kushner's not even a government employee, couldn't pass a background check in Trump season 1, the first 4 years, And he's there at the table in the Situation Room with the Mossad, and as you suggest, his pal Netanyahu, et cetera. But with top U.S. officials, you learn, and then the following meeting that was followed the next day with the intelligence community sort of weighing in on the pitch that they'd heard from Netanyahu and crew. And you saw, I thought, at least if this reporting is accurate, you saw the way in which there's pushback on the notion of going into Iran. There is, though, such tepid pushback, and it's so cocooned in lavish praise for the president and basically not wanting to go up against his impulses in any kind of strong way, that you see that Trump falls to his impulses then. It was only the CIA director who said, this is crazy. What you heard from Mossad is it's absolute lunacy.
Yeah. Well, and on top of that, there's the American mainstream press is paying almost no attention to when we rescued that pilot, the size of the operation that went in to rescue him, and the fact that it was only about 18 miles, 20 miles away from where they think this uranium is. So it looks like they were trying to do two things at once. They were trying to rescue the pilot, and they were trying to recover the uranium, and maybe most of, certainly not all of, but much, if not most, of that weaponry. And keep in mind, we left behind hundreds of millions of dollars worth of airplanes and helicopters and things. That most of that was there to try to recover the uranium, and that effort failed. And so, I mean, this is like, this is what happened to Jimmy Carter when he tried to rescue the hostages, and the helicopters went down, and it was a terrible thing. Nobody died this time, which is the good news. I mean, nobody would celebrate an American death. And thank God we got the guy back. But if the word leaks out, if the word leaks out that this was actually an attempt to get that uranium, that's just another slap in the face to the Trump administration.
It was we mentioned it a couple of times. At the time, I thought there's so much hardware there. Put up cut 15, Tony. That is the hardware that was involved in the rescue mission. It just seemed as though it was so excessive, and as you suggest, the proximity to the nuclear stores such that it had to at least raise a question. And so this is what Trump says. The second rescue mission in Iran involved 155 U.S. aircraft. This is Trump saying that the second rescue mission included 4 bombers, 64 fighter jets, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft. Again, these are Trump numbers, but it does sort of suggest that there was something else going on there.
Yeah. Boy, you got a picture of Trump looking like right out of right here in River City. It starts with a P and the side.
He is the king of the con,
Yeah.
Meantime, the narrative, which you kind of hint at when you talk about mainstream media and the story and the rescue mission, et cetera, there's an attempt to dictate what is being reported by Hegseth, who is, always blue skies, sunshine. We've got him. He's like a frat boy at halftime with these with a bloodlust,
Although sadly, he's not as smart as most frat boys.
This apparently not. Play me a little Hegseth with a cut 30, discussing or at least referencing the mercy of this great president.
President Trump had the power to cripple Iran's entire economy in minutes. But he chose mercy. He spared those targets because Iran accepted the ceasefire under overwhelming pressure. The new Iranian regime understood that a deal was far better than the fate that awaited them. This new regime just happened to look at what happened to their predecessors. Their top leadership was systematically eliminated. The previous Iranian supreme leader, dead. The Supreme National Security Council Secretary, dead. The Supreme Leader Office Advisor, dead. The Supreme Leader Military Office Chief, dead. The Defense Minister, no longer with us. The IRGC Commander, dead. The Armed Forces General Staff Commander, dead. The Intelligence Minister, dead. The IRGC Navy Commander, no longer here. The IRGC Intel Chief, dead. I skipped over a bunch, and I could go on and on and on, to include the so-called new Supreme Leader, wounded and disfigured. This new regime was out of options and out of time, so they cut a deal. They know this agreement means that they will never, ever possess a nuclear weapon. Under the terms, any nuclear material they should have will be removed. Any material, they should not have will be removed. Right now, their dust is deeply buried and watched 24/7 overhead. The president has been clear from the beginning, there will be no Iranian nuclear weapons. Period. Full stop. Other presidents said it. President Trump did it.
Okay, well, I mean, you get the bravado there and how he's trying to dictate the narrative, and
how delighted he is at all these deaths.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Nobody is mourning the loss of this regime, but geez, you know, this is not how Eisenhower would have spoken.
Or yeah, it's boy, you can say that again. I don't know that the narrative can be dictated though in this way, Tom. It just feels as though, particularly a war that's unpopular, people are repulsed by this on some level. Enough people in America and in the world are repulsed that I just don't know if this message is getting through the way these guys want it to. People like Hegseth.
Yeah, I think the world looked at this and said, "Wait a minute." Hegseth is saying there's a deal, but Trump and Hegseth are saying that the deal we accepted was Iran's 10-point deal, which says that they can enrich uranium. They can go back to it. Anybody who's paying any attention to what's going on knows that. Pardon me, but Wolfie here is having a fit. Anybody who's paying any attention to this knows that he's just lying. I mean, he's just blowing smoke. So, what can you say?
It's where we are. I want to take you to the midterms for a second and just take you to elections generally, because you wrote a whole book on that's the hidden history of of voter suppression. I forget what the name.
War on Voting.
War on Voting. Yeah, but there appear to be some things going on in America that are all consistent with the sort of tried and true voter suppression that we're familiar with, and then there's some inventive twists maybe from the guys who are now in power. Can you speak to sort of the overarching questions about what could happen to F with the elections in the midterms and then beyond?
Yeah. Well, the big concern is that they will try to seize ballots the way that they've done. I mean, you had this sheriff who just grabbed 50,000 ballots. You have the ballots that were taken down in Atlanta. The thing that really concerned me, when Trump went into Venezuela and took out Maduro, I went on the air and said that day, or maybe it was the following day because it happened after I was off the air, but I went on the air and the first thing I said was, this is all about the 2026 and 2028 elections. There is this widely held conspiracy theory on the MAGA right, which is part of what Tulsi Gabbard was all about, that the Dominion voting machines were designed in Venezuela, owned by Venezuela, manipulated by Venezuela, none of which is true, by the way. And the company now is owned by a right-wing billionaire. They've renamed themselves Liberty Voting, which makes me a little concerned. But anyhow, this conspiracy theory is that Venezuela was the reason why Trump lost the 2020 election, that they did this on behalf of Joe Biden. And so he's got Maduro. And I said on the air, I said, I'm just waiting for Maduro to come out and say, hey, I helped rig the 2020 election. Put me in that little, country club with Ghislaine Maxwell, please, and my wife. And then today we discover that two of his top generals have written an open letter to Donald Trump saying, we were part of this conspiracy. We helped rig the 2020 election. We did control those Dominion voting machines, and we are ready to testify about that in public. One of them is under indictment. He's facing life in prison. The other one is already serving a 20-year sentence. They both have obviously a lot to gain from this. And if they, if the administration accepts this and starts touting this, and then Maduro says something, there's Trump's excuse to go into places where he knows that there's going to be a lot of Democratic votes, or some really critical elections are happening, and simply seize the voting machines and say, we're just going to put this on pause now, or we're going to take these votes out, or we don't trust these votes, so we're going to refuse to certify them. I mean, we've seen the dress rehearsal of this in 2020. We saw all the half-assed attempts. They were just kind of falling all over themselves. It wasn't working out well for them. This time they've had the time to rehearse it, to plan it, to practice it, to get it ready. And I'm very, very concerned about it.
It does feel as though the last go round was rehearsal. You know, the fake elector schemes and the legal efforts that were really just lukewarm to begin with. But you're right. It feels as though they're loaded for bear, and they're going to try to go at it from all of these different standpoints and with all these different strategies. But I just would ask about if the renamed Dominion/Liberty, don't they have a reputational don't they have reputational damage that they might endure should they in any way accede to the demands of the GOP or Trump in sort of becoming participants in this scheme?
Well, this has already been litigated. I mean, this is why Fox News paid $700+ million, for defamation, was because of these kind of claims, these very specific claims. But you can't sue Trump. You can't sue the Department of Justice or the military if he sends the army in, or ICE if he sends ICE in as his little own Schutzstaffel, and you can't sue a couple of generals in Venezuela. So I'm not sure what the company can do other than either A, protest, or B, say, hey, we're now owned by a right-wing billionaire. The Venezuelans are gone.
Yeah, I guess it all seems like it's utter. And then Tom, I take you to the corruption on display. I mean, I just learned today, I think the news just broke today, that the arch is going to be paid for by money, taxpayer money, that's going to be jacked out of the National Endowment for the Arts, $15 million to build this massive archway across the Lincoln Memorial. It's a 250-foot tall arch in D.C.
Right. He wants to dwarf Abraham Lincoln's statue. And, which is just incredible. And then in his presidential library, he wants to build a giant golden statue of himself as well.
I mean, it's the stuff of, of Kim Jong-un.
This is Saddam Hussein stuff.
Yeah, right.
I mean, seriously.
No,
the
it's
big pictures of him, these giant, banners of him with his face on them. That's Saddam Hussein stuff.
Yeah, it's Saddam, it's Kim, it's all of the,
It's Stalin did it. Hitler did it, in the 30s.
But the corruption is beyond, it's just the self-enrichment's beyond just self-aggrandizement, right? I mean, there is an aspect, I'm sure that his beak is being wet somehow on the ballroom, et cetera. There's certainly a quid pro quo, as Palantir, helps build the ballroom/bunker, and as Amazon and Apple and these, tech bros jump in on that. But then there's the $10.5 billion shakedown that he's going after the U.S. government for, the $230 million he's going for the U.S. government for, and then the crypto. Whenever I see these numbers, Tom, that it's $1.5 billion that he has made on his crypto in the first year, I think, wow, that so undersells the amount of money that's pouring into Trump coffers, and I would say in a wholly corrupt way,
And by virtue of, with the help of, a crypto billionaire who was convicted of fraud and in prison, who Trump pardoned, who is now facilitating this entire process and is working with him, and with $1 billion investment from, what was it, the UAE, as I recall?
Right.
Or was it Qatar? I'm pretty sure it was the UAE, the people who gave him the airplane. And
Qatar. I guess
was
tough.
Qatar?
Yeah, it's tough. They wash together. All of So in any case, it's just, I mean, the level of corruption is beyond obscene. I mean, this is incredible. Yeah, and I guess it gets me around to you, and I don't mean to always speak to you as though you're the sagacious voice, the only one, but I do feel like you're a cry in the night sometimes, and you can tell me the realities. There's a lot of, maybe it's hopium being blown, which is associated with, we're going to get back in and everybody's going to be held to account. The corruption that we just talked about and beyond, the entire perversion of the Justice Department, the selling of pardons, this is going to be laid bare, and there will be a price to pay. Do you have faith that that will happen? Not with the current leadership of the Democratic Party. I mean, over the last 4 weeks, where have Schumer and Jeffries been
for example. They should have been out there screaming to high heaven every single day and demanding that Trump be impeached. You know, if the shoe was on the other foot, that Republicans would be doing that. Republican leadership would be doing that. But I am very hopeful that we move in that direction. We need an FDR kind of reboot. I mean, when FDR came in 33, in March of 33, he and the Republicans were screaming about it, calling him a dictator. I mean, he did an awful lot of stuff with executive orders, just like Trump did. And there's a great book about the history of that time about Frances Perkins, who was his first labor secretary, who was basically, I think the title of the book is something like The Woman Who Wrote the New Deal. And she literally was the force behind the New Deal. She made it all happen, her and Eleanor. And just, you know, the absolute unrelenting bulldozing first 100 days was just, you know, clearing stuff that FDR did that so few Americans are even unaware of, frankly. That's what we need to be doing again. And to do that, we need an FDR kind of leader. Somebody who's willing to say they hate me and I welcome their hatred.
No, right, exactly. You need almost a if you will, radicalism. I felt always in Biden, you had an institutional mind, someone who had a lot of faith in the institutions of America, someone who didn't want to rock the boat. He got a lot of stuff done, to be fair to him. But the Garland thing and essentially slow walking all the ways in which you could have held Trump to account. I mean, it's crazy. And then, of course, the misstep on the document case, which really, to me, is so it's so clean, it's so easy to understand, it's so indefensible, you know, that I felt all you needed to do is really prosecute that case at the federal in Washington D.C., where the you know, we said it at the time, but I don't know.
He rolled the dice in Florida, and I think it was 50-50, wasn't it? There were 2 judges he could get, and he got Cannon.
Yeah, it was actually 1 in 3. Imagine that.
1 out of 3.
Yeah, just brutal. So, all right, last question. I want to return to the Middle East. You know, Vietnam went on forever. It was the war that sort of informed my childhood, and this feels as though it won't go on forever, but the ramifications of it, I'm talking about economic and changing the, certainly changing the view of America and sort of a hegemonic power. Forget it. I mean, I think America is now being there's a recalibration going on. I was saying this a couple of days ago on my show, that I just feel as though everybody's recalibrating. America has become this powerful bully, still very relevant, but not an America you can count on in any way. I wonder if you can speak to this entire thing in the Middle East and put it in some historical context, which you do so well, and then speak to the way in which the world may be recalibrating.
That's a big order, Mark. I think what is being exposed by Trump going after Iran the way he has, and then making these flailing genocidal threats and things the way that he's doing, is the incompetence and dishonesty of this administration. It's obviously working to the benefit of Putin and Netanyahu and nobody else. Everybody else in the world is being hurt by it. Trump has already damaged our soft power, you know, getting rid of USAID, shutting down the Voice of America, you know, cutting most foreign aid to other countries. This is all Project 2025 stuff. It's all also Putin's to-do list for America. And it's the to-do list for the libertarian billionaires, you know, like the old David Koch thing, you know, when he ran for vice president in 1980 on a platform of get rid of everything except the military. And so here we are. I think that it's showing the world, I think it's reorganizing the world order. And I think that if Xi can restrain himself from taking Taiwan, he's going to end up China's going to end up being the next United States in terms of being a hegemonic superpower, a primary superpower in the world. But even if he does try to take Taiwan, if he works it out with Iran and with Russia, and we don't get into World War III, which is still, I think, a possibility, the world order is changing. You've got countries rapidly moving away from the dollar in terms of oil. I mean, now Iran is taking payment for oil in yuan, Chinese yuan, and Bitcoin. and they're taking Bitcoin for their strait passages, their $2 million strait passages. So there's this reorganization that is happening internationally at the same, which is diminishing our power dramatically. By diminishing the power of the dollar, it's also going to hurt us. You know, we average American people, we're the ones who have benefited from the hegemonic power of the United States and from the dominance of the dollar and the petrodollar. And so, you know, there's that. And then at the same time, I think that this 45, 50-year fantasy, which has been bought into by the media consistently, that Republicans are good on economics. Republicans understand how to run the country like a business. Running the country like a business is a good thing. Cutting taxes on billionaires and corporations benefits everybody. These are all just blatant lies. If you add up the Reagan, Bush, and Trump tax cuts over this last 40 some odd years, the total value of all of them exceeds $40 trillion. In other words, 100% of our national debt is simply money that we borrowed through selling treasuries and we handed to the billionaires. It's just as simple. And I think increasingly Americans are starting to realize that, or realize some pieces of that, and that this has just been a scam. I mean, when Reagan came into office, 2/3 of Americans were in the middle class. They could get there with a single paycheck. You could buy a house, you could buy a car, you could take a vacation every year, you could put kids through college on one paycheck. 2/3 of Americans. Today, only 43% of American families qualify in that category, and it requires 2 paychecks, not one. So this, and 100% of that has been caused by 45 years, or however many years it's been, of Reaganomics, of this radical right-wing economic policy and political policy that has been foisted upon us by these right-wing billionaires and these 4 successive Republican administrations. And as people are waking up to this, they're starting to look around and go, well, what's the alternative? And sadly, you've got Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries who don't know how to talk, who don't know how to speak, who don't seem to have much spine to them. And, which is why you're hearing a lot of Democrats say, damn it, we need new leadership. But there are some really bright spots in the Democratic Party. And there are some people who are willing to speak up and stand out. And, from, Sheldon Whitehouse and AOC and, I need not go through the list.
In Georgia, I think Cory Booker's not bad. I don't know.
Yeah. We got a bunch of people who are standing up and speaking out and becoming real stars. And one of my favorites over the long term is J.B. Pritzker.
Sure.
This is a guy who has really shocked me. I mean, when I'm on WCPT in Chicago, which is the largest progressive station in the country now, and when he first became governor, I was skeptical. I mean, a billionaire, the heir to the Hilton fortune or Hyatt fortune, whichever one.
Yeah.
But he has just blown my mind. This guy is a solid progressive, and he can fund his own campaigns, and he's willing to stand up to Trump, and he doesn't take crap from anybody. So, and there are other good people too. I mean, Andy Bashir is out there speaking up, and obviously Gavin Newsom is doing everything he can to try to become president. I think that there's a lot of potential for the Democratic Party, and I think that there's a lot of potential and a very positive future for the United States. The other thing, and I'll just mention this briefly, that gives me hope is, people like Peter Turchin. Peter Turchin has written a series of books. He's got this theory, this 40-year theory, that American history, and he goes all the way back to the American Revolution, that American history basically goes in these 40-year cycles. You get 40 years of conservative, and then they kind of exceed their portfolio and start causing problems or whatever. And then you get 40 years of liberal, kind of fixing it. And then by the end of those 40 years, the liberals are corrupt, and then come the conservatives again. And that fits in with the 80-year cycles that you and I have talked about before, that Neil Howe and William Strauss talk about in the Fourth Turning. It's just these two 40-year pieces within that 80-year cycle. And here we are 80 years out from the end of World War II, to the year, basically, or at least last year we were, and 40 years out, more or less, from the Reagan Revolution. And I think that we are at a turning point. I think we're at a major turning point, and that the next couple of years, certainly the next 5 years, maybe even the next 3 or 4 years, are going to see really, really transformational stuff happening in America in a good way. I'm actually quite optimistic about this, as much as these guys have done so much damage to our country.
I love hearing that. I mean, it's a deeply corrupt administration, and I worry about our ability to climb out of it. But I think you're right. I mean, there will be a public desire for serious change, and to that extent, I think you can kind of be hopeful.
And the one piece of I'm sorry, the one piece of advice I'd give Democrats right now: if you look at Magyar, the guy who's taking on Orban in Hungary, he's doing it on a single topic: corruption. If you look at Alexei Navalny, who almost took down Putin, Putin had to murder him to get him out of the way. He did it entirely on corruption. His nonprofit foundation was called the Anti-Corruption Foundation. If Democrats want to take back this country, and the swamp is just shorthand for corruption, they need to be running an anti-corruption campaign. Corruption needs to become their number one thing. Now, I realize that there's a bunch of corrupt Democrats. You got these so-called problem solvers, the Josh Gottheimers and Jared Goldens of the world, who are on the take from all kinds of big corporations and from APAC and whatnot. Fine, we'll weed them out or deal with them or ignore them. I don't care. But the Democratic Party should be the anti-corruption party going forward. That should be their singular focus, because it encompasses everything. It encompasses taxes. It encompasses corporate monopoly. It encompasses the self-enrichment in the Trump crime family and all the people, the cronies around him. I mean, the military, it just goes on and on and on. It all falls into this one basket. I need to write an op-ed about that.
No, I feel like you have touched on it before. I've spoken about it before because I love what Ossoff does. He does this corruption is costing you this. He'll tie it to everything from education to healthcare to, I mean, he'll make the connection. It's not just that it's corrupt. It's that it's costing us as a people, literally costing us. That's money that would have gone here. And I love that. And I felt that Elizabeth Warren did that so effectively. That's why I liked her campaign. She was out there and she used the word corruption and corrupt. You need to hammer that. I love that you say that. Keep hammering that. I think it's because it's so clear as well. It's so naked that I think it really does cut through. So, hey, I'm so grateful for your time. I will post a link if you want to pre-order Who Killed the American Dream, the greatest political crime ever told. It comes out in July.
If I could, Mark, real quick. This book is the story of, in 1886, a court reporter and a member of the Supreme Court, a justice on the Supreme Court, and a couple of railroad oligarchs got together and decided to give corporations human rights and power under the 14th Amendment. And it was all a lie. It was a giant scam. And this is why corporations are persons today. This is why they have so much power. This is why so much corruption is happening. And I tell the story like a murder mystery. And I don't think it's ever been laid out this way. It's super easy to read. It's like an old noir novel, and it was just doing the research was just great fun.
I love it. I mean, I don't know the story. I'm anxious. So you'll come back around and we'll give it another lift. But,
you betcha.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the list of those to pre-order. Who Killed the American Dream, the greatest political crime ever told. There's a link to it under this video. Tom, you know how I feel about you. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to the next time.
Well, thank you, Mark. You're the best, and it's always an honor and a pleasure to be on with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Tom Hartman, everyone. Right on, Albert. Right on, Kim. Right on, all of you. I'll tell you what I don't understand, Kim.
What?
I'm coming right to you with it. How can this show only have 600 likes right now? I mean, I don't understand.
What?
I know, Albert. I'm outraged by it. And I'm going to blame...
I blame you.
All right, maybe that's...
You've got to smash it with your iron rod immediately.
It really,
iron rod.
I don't understand it, Albert. How does that work? I don't quite understand why a show so filled with good information is...
How does the internet work?
I don't quite get it, Albert. I mean, how only 600 likes?
You just got to go down there, hit the thumbs up if you're hearing this message. I think that's what you got to do.
God,
I think people are so mesmerized by you.
Oh my God.
Don't think of clicking the like button because they're so sucked into the words of which you speak.
Who is having that conversation?
All right. No. I will tell you quickly, I have to get out of here.
Now,
I don't.
Your comments.
I have to go lie down and think about my desperate plight to stay alive. Christian nationalism is no different than radical Muslim, says Wes in Florida. This we already read. I already commented on it. Why is it showing up again?
I blame you.
All right. Okay, Kim. I think you're the one who handles the comments. So
and now, your comments.
I am not an authority, says Cousin Erie, on the New Testament. How many times does Jesus use the word lethality? Right, exactly. You know, it's funny for a guy who wraps himself in the Bible. Pete Hegseth really cracks open that lethality word a lot. And death, death, death. How about that clip we played for Hartman, where he's going, this person dead, this person dead, this leader dead. That period, I mean, if you had stopped at 4, it would have been still too many. And he went on. It's just it's an odd bloodlust that Hegseth has.
Excited about it, yeah.
Yeah. $2, Tony, Albert, and Kim tip. Thanks for all you do. That's Richard Delamater. Thank you, Richard, for all you do. In appreciation for the Thompson Hartman Summit, says David Mills with a $20 super chat.
Big shout out.
I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really, really cool of you, man. Thank you for the support.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mark Thompson Show, for having Tom on, says Rhonda, thank you for recognizing and thanking us. I take your thanks, I add some thanks, I throw it back to you.
Thank you so much.
That's how we do it. So sick of all this. You know what I mean? Yeah, Glenn B. in Australia. The Australians are sick of it. Imagine how we feel in America. Dan Sylvia talking about... what's her name? Caroline Levitt. She lies.
She lied. Indeed, she
Dan.
does.
Yeah, appreciate that, Dan. Well, what's a deep stater? Asked Harry Magden. Go into membership under this channel, right there under the star, and you'll see what the deep staters are. And the deep staters next week, it's like our highest tier of support. So if you're there, we try to give you some additional things. Now we're trying to do some stuff with the channel. Hopefully it'll work. We're trying also to include everybody. So if you're already at that level, and Patreon or PayPal, we're trying to make sure that you're taken care of too. It's quite the job. We had no idea it would be such a job, but we're trying to be as fair as we possibly can be.
Are they the ones who show up in green, or is that just a channel member?
What's that?
Are they the ones who show up in green in the comment section?
They are, yeah. Those are that's the shadow cabinet, or the or deep staters. They show up in green. And and after a month, after they've been, I think after the first month, the icon goes gold, which is very, very exciting.
What?
I know.
Oh, that's very Trump. That's very
Trumpian.
How Trumpian, yeah.
Very
Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all the support.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. Thank you, Albert, Kim.